Welcome to Google Presents Know Your Worth, Structuring and Negotiating the Best Deal in partnership with ColorCom. I'm really excited to moderate this conversation today. I'm excited to see all of you. Thank you for being with us. My name is Angelina Darrisaw. I'm the founder and CEO of C-Suite Coach. My company has been a vendor for Google since 2017. We're happy to have you join us all today. This topic is near and dear to my heart as it touches one of the issues that comes up so often with the Black and brown talent that my company's coaching programs touch, both within organizations and on the business owner side. We're always raising questions like, how do I advocate for more? When do I ask? What do I even ask for? So these are all some of the things that we're going to discuss today with our esteemed panelists. Before we begin, I just have a couple of housekeeping items for you. While the session is going on today, we're going to ask that everyone remain muted except for our speakers, but go crazy in the chat. We want to hear from you. We want to know if you have questions, if you have comments, if something resonates, and also maybe share some of your own experiences so we can learn how you're thinking about these topics as well. I'd also like to inform you that this event is currently being live streamed on YouTube. It's on an unlisted link that's only been shared with people who've RSVP'd for the events. So we will have a Q&A session following the conversation for those of you who are on Google Meet. Go ahead, as I mentioned, drop your questions in the chat. Feel free to use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the window to ask a question live. We do ask that you don't type in the chat until we open up for Q&A for your questions so that we can make sure we get those all answered. But if you're on live stream, feel free to type your question in the comment box and our event planners will do their best to get them over to me. So please also look out for the post recording and the post survey. We want to hear your feedback on how the session went. Lastly, if you prefer to view via the live stream, feel free to click on the link that's being shared below in the chat. So now it is time for us to dive in. I want to kick it off, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our panelists, but I do want them to introduce themselves. We have such a great group of women with us here today that have such unique experiences. So first, I want to introduce Maria Medrano, who is the Global Diversity Narrative and Public Policy Lead at Google. And she's responsible for setting a global strategy that includes partnerships, policy, and practices with equitable outcomes. She's got more than 20 years of experience, and these topics are also one that she has so much knowledge on. So I'm excited to hear from her today, and you'll hear more from her in just a minute. We also have with us Rachel Spivey, who's the head of retention and progression consultant team over at Google. She's worked with Google for 11 years and moved up and had to negotiate and ask for more, and also has folks coming to the table doing the same for her. She's currently ensuring retention and progression rates are at parity across race and gender lines throughout Google, and she's passionate about leading this team aimed at helping Googlers stay and thrive within the company. Last, but certainly not least, we have Gabrielle Gambrell, who's a consultant, a speaker, and a graduate faculty professor at NYU. She currently is serving industry-leading sports brands, media brands, entertainment, technology, and lifestyle brands, as well as managing communications for influencers. As a chief marketing officer, she's executed award-winning strategies to promote and increase visibility throughout their different organizations. So really excited to hear from each of you. To kick it off, I'd like each of you to just tell me a little bit about your background and why this topic is important to you. So let's start with Maria.
Good day to everybody. So thank you, Angela. I'm so excited to be with all of you today. As Angela's mentioned, I'm here at Google leading the diversity and equity strategy and partnerships and narrative. It's exciting because we have over 140,000 employees, not only to mention that we're in over 170 cities and in over 60 countries. When we talk about being inclusive and ensuring that we have an opportunity to ensure that we are doing our part, I have a great opportunity of being in this role to work with so many amazing people. I've had so much opportunities to travel the world and so many opportunities to work with amazing folks across the organizations that I've been a part of. But this work is super important to me because I myself am the first in my family to have graduated from high school, first in my family to have gone to college, first in my family to have gone to graduate school. So when I think about the role that I played since I was a young girl, I always tell people that I was born being a little advocate, right? I was born to a teenage mom. And being first generation in this country, it is not easy. So this work is not only passionate work from a professional perspective, it's super, super personal. I myself now am a mom with 3 kids, 3 beautiful children, that they now know the responsibility they carry because I'm passing the torch around what's necessary in order to be seen and to be able to be valued and to know your worth. And so those are things that really bring me to this conversation. I'm super excited to share more and dive in with the panel, but just a little bit about me to get us started.
Thank you so much, Maria. Rachel?
Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Spivey, and I lead our retention and progression consultant team, where we focus on making sure retention and progression rates are at parity across race and gender lines. And I'm so excited about this topic because my team has worked with over 1,000 underrepresented Googlers and helped advocate for them and navigate very difficult and challenging pathways. And I'm here to help you do the same.
Thank you. Gabrielle?
Thanks, Angelina. Hi, everyone. Gabrielle Gambrell. I am so passionate about this conversation. As a young woman, as a millennial, as a Black woman, I'm really in favor of us talking about money more, talking about compensation, being comfortable, having allies, being able to speak to people in the positions that we want to be in, being able to know how much we should be paid, how much we deserve, and being able to speak up for ourselves. So a lot of my career in media entertainment, as Angelina mentioned prior, serving ABC, CBS Corporation, Comcast, NBC Universal, leading nonprofits, Columbia University, NYU. And I've seen a lot of transparency amongst men, white men, in terms of compensation. And I would like to see that amongst women of color as well. So I'm excited for today.
Oh, thank you so much. And so I hope you all heard just the variety of experiences that's in the room. Gabrielle's been on the side as a business owner, both with internal within organizations and also now running her own practice. We have Rachel, who's been with one company and been able to grow throughout her career, and then Maria, who's grown across different companies. So you'll have a lot of different viewpoints about how to advocate for yourself in different scenarios, and that hopefully can all resonate with you. Now, I want to kick it off with you all just sharing what was one of the most transformative first experiences you had having to advocate for yourself. If you could just kick it off there. And let's start with Rachel.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute until the person was admitted. There's so many times. I think my advocacy, and I consider myself an advocate in so many different forms and fashions, but it really started in high school. I know we were talking about our career, but I realized thinking about my advocacy journey, it started a very long time ago. And even getting into the door of many colleges, seeing issues in my high school that I didn't think were that should be happening, and advocating for myself and others. But in terms of a corporate setting, I think when I first joined Google and I did a role, and I also noticed some things that I didn't think were right, and I had some solutions and some ideas, and so I boldly spoke to our senior vice president about it and shared my ideas, and luckily he agreed and created a role for that for those services and those ideas to exist. And so I'm really grateful that I've had opportunities, even starting from high school up into my career, and of course now, where I've had an opportunity to advocate for myself, but also just, I think about it, advocacy in terms of role creation. It's not just compensation, getting the things that you want, some of the flexibility that you want, well-being. So I hope that we can discuss a little bit more of those things as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and already I'm hearing some themes from you. You just have to get out there and ask, and I'm glad that you did that and got that early on affirmation that was the right thing to do. What about you, Maria?
I'm going to plus one with Rachel mentioned around the high school piece. I shared my experience, right? My mom was 16 when she had me. And so being the first and being expected to follow in her footsteps, right? Why was I asking about college? Why was I asking about what does it take to be able to wear a suit, to be sitting in an office and carrying a briefcase? Like, those are real questions that were being asked of me, and me being able to advocate for myself to say, because I see it, and because why not me? Those are the big things that I always say when I'm like, why can't it be me? So I'm going to fast forward a bit to when I went to obtain my first master's degree, my MBA. I was actually really looking for a program that would see me. And when I found the program, it was one that I was super committed to, that my leadership was not very certain. Why do you need an MBA? You have a bachelor's. Why do you need to go get an MBA? And I asked the same question, well, why not? And the question back was, well, if you can get in, I suppose, because now looking back, their assumption was that I was not going to get into the program. So I apply, I do what's needed, I get accepted into the program. I get a phone call from the director of the program to tell me, Ms. Medrano, you have been admitted to the program. I let the noise and the story of the naysayers, which were leaders that I was working for, in my head, that my response back was, perhaps it's not the right time. It's not the right time to get an MBA. And the person on the other side of the phone told me, Maria, if you don't do it today, you're never going to do it. I need you to accept this seat in the classroom. And I remember at that moment, I said, I will accept it. I accepted it knowing I didn't have any support in the organization. That I accepted it knowing that that voice on the other side of this phone was telling me I needed to accept it and I would just figure it out. Again, just thinking about just what I needed to do. And I'll make a long story short, I went and I advocated for myself. When no one was willing to advocate for me, I advocated for myself. When my manager told me no, I went to her manager. And when she told me no, I went to the person that hired me 2 years prior, who happened to be the CFO of the company, to let them know what I was going after. And they looked at me and said, why are you being told no? Not only did she say, yes, you're going to do this program, she gave me the resources that were necessary, a basic laptop, the adjusted schedule of leaving at 3 p.m. on Friday versus 5 p.m. And I was able to get my degree. If I would not have advocated for myself, if I wouldn't have trusted what others were saying of me, both the good and the bad, I wouldn't have pushed myself to kind of get to that next level. I mean, obviously I've completed the program, things have been great and all that, but those are the continual things that even when you get through those naysayers and those roadblocks, you're going to continue to find them at every level of your career and your pathway.
I love that, and it resonates so much. We have so many similar experiences, Maria. I also am the daughter of a teenage mom, and one thing my mom always told me that I'm hearing from you is no might just mean find another way or right now. So that's something, as we think about advocacy, not letting that first no deter you. I hope you all take that with you. Gabrielle.
Yes, thank you. This makes me think of, I'm a very proud fourth generation college graduate. It's not something I take lightly as a Black woman. I'm very proud of that. My great grandparents attended HBCUs because they couldn't attend anywhere else. So I was always taught and reinforced the significance of education. And I was always under the impression that, oh, you go to college and you're going to be rolling and you'll be financially stable and you'll have all the desires of your heart. That was a rude awakening. So I graduated college early. I graduated college at 20 years old. My last semester of college, I was interning at ABC, got a job, hired after my internship, which is amazing, starting my career in talent relations, in television production. And for those of you who are familiar with those industries, when you work as a production assistant, you get minimum wage. I graduated with honors. And I was making minimum wage with celebrities all day, a part of a live television show, working on set, but that was not enough to live comfortably in New York. And so had to come to Jesus. One of my mentors, thank goodness for mentors, was the senior vice president at CBS Corporation, brought me over to CBS. I was elated to make $30,000. I thought I was balling out of control. Little did I know that I still could not live comfortably on $30,000. Went, got my master's, graduated with honors, the top of my class with my master's. And so at the time I was at CBS for a few years, finished my master's, and I went to my boss and said, I finished my master's, can I get more money? And he laughed at me. And he's like, what? Like, your master's doesn't mean anything. You work in television. And so one of the board members of ColorCom, my mentor, Tiffany Smith on Hawaii, who Tiffany is the executive vice president at Viacom CBS for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tiffany said, Gabby, no one's going to hand you money. No one's ever going to give you a raise. No one's going to give you more money ever. I said, what? What do you mean I'm never going to get a raise? I'm never going to get more money. She said, you have to come and prove that you deserve the money. So from that point on, so I'm 22 years old, I started a job diary. And so I waited about 6 months. I came in with a 5-page document on why I deserve a raise. Everything on that document was above and beyond what was in my job description, stuff that I created, stuff I initiated, projects, things that I just did extremely well on. And then I followed up after our meeting. I followed up in writing with an email based on our conversation. I said, I look forward to hearing more. And I got that raise. And that taught me that if you want more money, you have to go for it, but you also have to prove your worth and prove your value.
Just wow, Gabrielle, so many gems there. Thank you so much. Yes, we're all doing the finger snaps on mute. So thank you for sharing that. So it sounds like in each of your experiences, I'm hearing a little bit of the need for negotiating, the need to not be deterred by that first no. And I know you're all coming to the table with such rich negotiation skills. I'd love if each of you could share some of your top negotiation advice for the folks in the room. And any of you can get started.
Yeah, I would say to the story I just shared, have it in writing. Be able to articulate above and beyond what's in your job description, above and beyond what you're doing. So something I recommend to my students, to my mentees, something I do myself. Whenever I learn a new skill or whenever I do something really well in terms of a project base, I add it to a Google Doc. And so that is always constantly updated. You should never update your resume every once in a while. That your resume, regardless of where you are in your career, regardless of how happy you are with your employer, that is something that should be updated on a daily basis and will help you to articulate your value, your worth, and your new skills. So put that in writing.
I love that so much. You know, one of my good friends, Darrisaw, once told me she keeps a brag journal of all of her accomplishments. And I think the value of doing that is sometimes we forget the amazing things we do. So if we're not regularly updating our accomplishments, it's hard to then bring that to the table. And if you're coming to your manager or someone you want to negotiate, now you have a record of everything you've gotten achieved in that last year. So that's great. Rachel, Maria, what about you?
I would add that one piece that I've always talked, similar to what Gabrielle said, just know what it is that you do and understand the contributions, the value you bring to the project, to the organization. I also tell many folks is to just know your external value. Like, there's no harm in having conversations and understanding what your value is so you can compare that to what your current situation is providing you, because only you have control of that. And so as you're having those conversations, it is your life. No one is going to take care of you. You have to advocate. And again, being Latina, it was always the do a good job and people will notice. Do a good job, people notice, and you're quiet, you're the perfect little worker bee, and everything will be fine and dandy, right? And so in order to ensure that you are mindful of what your value is, don't be shy about having those conversations to understand what other people are willing to pay you so that you can compare, and you always have choices. So understanding your external value, making sure that you have your resume updated, and making sure that you are showing up and that you are delivering the way in which you want to be seen. So if you want that next level job, you show up in that way so folks know and assume that you're at that level. So when conversations happen, it's like, oh, you're not at that level? Well, let's have this conversation. So there has to be always, like I say, these parallel paths to make sure that you are doing your part. So it makes it very easy for them to do the very obvious, which sometimes isn't as obvious as it needs to be.
I'll just add to that, and I'll say that to be informed about the comp structure at your organization or wherever you're working. So is your comp informed by your performance? Is it informed by your job level ladder? Is it your level? Is it your time and role? be informed and know that going in when you make a suggestion or a recommendation or you know, a request for a raise, whatever that is. Also know timing. You know, maybe your company only does it once a quarter. All of these things, because if you are informed about the current processes, and then you can advocate, and especially even places where they've made exceptions. So if they say, oh, we never make exceptions and we never give raises in the middle of the year, you can say, oh, I know Bob Doe got an exception in the middle of the year, and that can kind of influence. So I would just say be informed about how compensation works, the levels, the bands, what factors into it, and be able to speak confidently to it. And again, anytime that they make exceptions, because I guarantee you, even though there's rules and structures, there's 9 times out of 10, there are definitely corner cases where they've made exceptions. And so if you need to be in that corner case, you need to have your receipts ready, I'll say, to be able to request to get an exception.
Now, Rachel, one quick follow-up for you there. When you're working with a big organization like a Google, how do you stay in the know about those things?
So luckily, our company is pretty transparent. So we have internal articles about how compensation works, what factors into compensation. And so even like, you know, and then also Googlers are generous enough to also start sharing their salaries, different bands that they're in. So hopefully see if your company has any kind of transparent resource about how compensation works. If there's nothing in an intranet, I would recommend you go to your HR person and ask friends, ask people that have worked there, ask, you know, if you don't know anyone else who works in the company, ask your friends if they know someone who might know. Like, just start asking and getting that information so that you can be very well informed and confident in going in and making your ask.
I could add just really quickly there, having been in different companies, it is pretty consistent that every company should have like a compensation band. So again, if you are confident, and you should be confident, you're having these conversations, ask the questions, because people are asking, like, what is the compensation band? What is the compensation range, right? And where, if they're offering, so where does this land in the midpoint, right? Is it the middle? Is it the beginning? Where is it at? So the more informed you are in those questions you ask, then the folks on the other side are like, oh, wow, this person knows the questions, right? And then you can hold them accountable for how they're showing up. The other thing that I'll mention that you reminded me, Rachel, is understanding what's most important to you. Everyone has different priorities, right? Is it the cash, like the base pay? Is it the flexibility? Is it the benefits? Is it the PTO? There are so many. When you think about the compensation package, it's so much more bigger than just the obvious kind of paycheck, which I know it's super important to everyone, but there are other points. And lives, you know, people go through ebb and flow. So just have that in mind and have those conversations. So when you are negotiating, you know that you can negotiate the entire package. That's super important as well.
Thank you for that. And I actually want to go back to something both you and Gabrielle said, Maria. You talked about the importance of advocating for yourself. And, you know, Gabrielle mentioned keeping that journal of your accomplishments, and your resume should be a living document. You also talked about not just being a good worker, being advocating for yourself. One thing I hear often when we're in trainings, particularly with Black and Latino employees or business owners, is there's this fear that there's a stigma associated with speaking about your work. What would you say to any of the folks in the room who are afraid of appearing too arrogant? How do they appropriately share their accomplishments and the work that they do? And how do they gain the confidence to do that?
I had a sponsor that I still listen to all the time. And the one piece is you need to be able, you always need to have a point of view. You can't be seen as someone that's just sitting there being quiet and not having something to say. On that same side of the conversation is, I always would tell folks, leave your ego at home, right? No one needs additional egos. It's what value you're contributing. How do you show up, and how do you show your viewpoint in a way that provides an opportunity to know that you're someone they want to work with, you're someone they want to partner with, you're someone that's knowledgeable, you're someone that's sought after for, a subject matter expertise. So it does take a fine balance of A, be knowledgeable to be able to have a point of view, B, what do you want your brand to be so that you can have that insight to be able to show up in those conversations, and C, what is it that you want to be known for? So it's a very fine balance. It's something that you have to take care of. It's not just something that happens, right? It's you talk about that in marketing and brand, conversations, and you're talking about the brand of the persona, that it all comes together. So it is important. The confidence comes with time, but the confidence comes with how much you prepare yourself for it, right? And that requires you having your mentors, your sponsors, you know, having folks that you can count on, because you can't do it alone. I mean, I can tell you from having to join, you know, organizations, that's the biggest piece. It's like, oh gosh, they hired me. Like, they really think I can do this work. Like, who are those folks that I can connect with? But those are things that are in your head, and you have to put those to the side, and you have to be able to step in and show up as a fearless person that you are.
I'm like over here clapping. Gabrielle, I also want to hear your point of view on this.
I always tell myself, what would a man do? Because I think as women, we are naturally perhaps timid or soft-spoken. And I even look at my husband where he's like, just have the conversation. If you are thinking about your compensation, if you're thinking about your worth, if you have ideas that I deserve more, you probably deserve more. You know when you do a good job. You know when you're working hard. You know when you're the first one, last one. You know when people are like, oh, I want you on the project. I want to work with you. When people are pulling you in, when people are trusting you, when you're getting those thank you so much, job well done emails, when you're getting those accolades, you know your value. And so because you are valuable, that is the confidence you need. Know that you're valuable. Speak your worth. And I want to get back to something Rachel and Maria were talking a little bit about in terms of compensation. And you may not work for a company that divulges that information. You may work for a small business, or your company, your boss may not just be that open, or your HR may be non-existent, what have you. It is imperative to your success that you have a network of people who do what you do. It is imperative to your success that you have a network of people that do what you want to do, that you respect, that you trust, who you are honest with, and that you guys talk about salary and compensation. All of my friends that do what I do, for the most part, I know what they make, they know what I make. There's been a handful of times in my career where a friend got a raise or a friend got a bonus or, you know, this or that. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, girl, go get your coin. And like, that helps. That helps me to know to talk to people that do what I do, that talk to people that are in my industry who I trust and respect and know they're being honest with me and I'm being honest with them. That has helped me to advocate for myself.
I'm just going to say you do walk it like you talk it with that, because I have to tell y'all, years ago, I met Gabrielle at a conference and she was so upfront about where she was in her career salary wise. And it encouraged me. At first, I was like, this is so awkward. We're talking about money. But it encouraged me to talk about money more with my friends. If I want to have this kind of life, how much do I need to make? What is realistic for me as I move through industries? So I'd really encourage all of you to get over some of those discomforts that come with talking about money and be really open about it with your friends. Now, a couple of years ago, I think it was an Inc. article that talked about how, especially for women, not negotiating could cost you $1 million in your career, and the importance of negotiating even early. I'd love if each of you could just touch on, you know, why is it so important to negotiate even for those entry-level roles? Some of us have fears. We don't have enough experience. I just need to work my way up and get started. Why should you still negotiate even early in your career?
I'll start off. I'll just say that practice makes perfect for everything. So the more comfortable you get with it and the more you know your own voice in terms of style, I'm not like a chest beater, like, oh, I'm so great, you should listen to me. That's not my personality. I use stats. I use stats and cold facts to back me up, and so that nobody has anything to say. So usually, like at work, I talk about this is what we've achieved in our program, 80% of this, and da-da-da. Like I just wrap it all stats, and I never have to tell you I'm great, but you realize it with all of the stats. And so that is, I realized my style and how I feel comfortable. I'm not someone who's going to walk in and say I'm the best person here. That's just never my style. And so the earlier you start, the more you practice, you will figure out a style that works for you and that you feel comfortable and that you can continue to grow and foster in your career.
I would add to that, as a hiring manager, as someone that's hired at different levels, someone that's hired at conglomerates, at huge companies, at small companies, at nonprofits. Every hiring manager, it is pretty much the norm that you have a salary range. So if the range is from 85 to 100,000 and the candidate says, oh, I'll take 80. Sometimes you get the candidate 80 and you save that money in your budget. There is always a range. In my career, there has always been a range when I've hired someone, and there's been opportunities where the candidate is great, they're a person of color, what have you. I know that they deserve more. And so when they ask for a specific amount and I know they're leaving money on the table, I'll say, actually, this is the band and I'm going to bring you in this, and they are ecstatic. So you guys should also get in the habit when you are in negotiation or you're looking for a new job, ask, what is the range? Not how much does this pay? Because someone could say 100 and the range goes up to 125 or 150 or what have you. What is the range of the position? And know that whatever number you typically say, and when you make offers, every time I've ever made an offer, intentionally with the anticipation that the candidate will come back and ask for more, I say a lower number. So if my band is 125, I'll come offer the person 100, hoping that they come and say, actually, I was looking for 115 or 120. So know that there's typically money being left on the table from the get-go.
And I'll add on there to what Rachel and Gabrielle said, that they're really wanting to, understand their worth. They're going to come back and ask for more. And so negotiate. You always negotiate. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no, and then you have a decision point to make. So I tell everyone, no matter what level, I have younger brothers that I'm, coaching them as they're going through it. I always tell them, never ever take the first offer. You always negotiate, because even if it's a no, they know that you're willing to negotiate. And that's input and feedback that goes into, the whole assignment of just who is joining their organization. So it's super important. It's super, super important. And I say negotiate this is not even just from a career perspective. You negotiate everything. It's in life. It's just once you start getting comfortable in the fact of what your worth is and understanding that it's something that you do for your day job, I guarantee you start to feel that empowerment in your life overall. And it's fun.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Maria. When back in the day, I used to do one-on-one executive coaching, and one of the activities I'd have my clients do when they were uncomfortable with negotiating is I would say, for a week, I want you to ask for ridiculous things everywhere you go. And this is something any of you can try in the room. That means if you're walking into a bodega, ask if you can have something for free. If you're walking into a department store and there's no discounts listed, ask for one anyway. And what was always an aha is at the end of the week, I said, just keep asking and asking until you hear a no. And they were like, I got so many yeses. I kept asking for things that I thought were outrageous. And so many people said, okay, I can pull up this one, or I can give you this kind of discount, at the Bloomingdale's or the Macy's. And they would always be so shocked. So I would encourage any of you to take 1 week, push yourself out of your comfort zone and just get comfortable asking for outrageous things. Something else that I just wanted to flag, for those who are business owners in the room, the importance of talking about money is also, when you're building relationships with your clients, it's important to get a sense of their budget as well. The same way you can negotiate within an organization, you want to be thinking about how do you negotiate with your clients, and often they'll be really transparent, especially if you invest the time to build those relationships. Now, I'm glad each of you touched on why it's important to get started negotiating early. And, looking at the experience each of you have, we have 10 to 20 plus years of experience with all of you. I'd love to know, how does negotiating shift from when you're very junior to when you're getting more seasoned and you have more experiences? How has that shifted for you as you've had to negotiate roles? Rachel?
Sure, I think it depends on what you want and what you're looking for. As Maria touched on earlier, things that I valued before, I don't value as much now, and things that there's new values that I have. Like, I need to be able to pick up my daughter at 4:30. That's a value. And if you can't flex with that, I can't help you. If I need to be able to be located with my family. If you can't flex with that, I cannot help you. And I think the other thing that you get in your career as you get later is the ability to say no, which is a currency that people don't talk about a lot. Luckily, I have been at Google 11 years. There are very few things that I do that I don't want to do. And I've grown to get the ability just to say, no, thank you, I'm not interested in that. or I'm thinking I don't want to do that. And so that is something that is currency to me. But I also, in that other currency, I get the ability to say, hey, I want to do this. And I usually direct where I go next. I'll tell a little secret to this group. I have never applied for a role and gotten it, even though I've had several different jobs my entire 11 years at Google.
When I think about the opportunity I have now that I'm 20 years in and more senior, is just being able to realize the role that I play. Like part of my responsibility now, even when I sit here inside of Google and outside of Google, is how I show up to be a leader to help others, to help those that are going through their experiences, those that are unsure around what they need to do or what they should be doing. And so part of it is, yes, I still need my livelihood, right? I'm a mom of 3. My oldest is going off to college. Now I'm a caretaker. So the mom that I mentioned to you, now I take care of her fully. And so I need to have that level of flexibility on the fact that I would travel all the time. Now, not so much, because not only am I having to take care of my kids, I have to take care of my mom and dad. And so finding the right balance and understanding that, I think, is the privilege that we earn. I would say that we earn because we've shown the work that we've done. We've shown what we can do. And I think at the end of the day as well is that I think for all of us that are on this panel, I think we have folks that reach out to us often, that ask for our thoughts and they ask for what we would do. And those are people that we've earned their respect and their ability to trust us enough. And so I think that that's the gift that I see now as I'm getting older, as I'm kind of looking at this next stage of life, is just the responsibility that I bear, that I am grateful for having. Because, oh my gosh, I would have never, again, where I grew up and the opportunities I had, I could never see where I'm sitting at now. And so I think that's what I see now. It's different. So then when I go in and have to have conversations from a negotiation perspective, it's like, gosh, if I'm here from where I started, I could go I could do anything, right? I could do anything. And I keep that perspective to make sure that I make others realize that they have so much potential for them to yield on their own, to be on their journey. And that's really where I'm at right now.
That's so powerful. And I think it goes back to your earlier point, which is it takes practice. And if you get started, the earlier you get started, the easier it becomes. So it's a consistent habit that we have to build. I know that there's so many of you who are beaming with questions, and I want to make sure we get to some of them. So we'll kick it over to Q&A. Please start putting your questions in the chat. If you're with us on YouTube, we want you to put your questions in the comments so we can gather those questions and I can ask those of the panelists. But I have one final question before we open it up to the Q&A, and I'll kick it off with Gabrielle. I'd love for you to just talk about, since many of us in the room are women of color, what are some of the unique considerations for women of color when it comes to self-advocacy and negotiating your worth?
Great question. So I think I know as women of color that we bring a unique advantage point, right? So when you get my perspective, if you need to know what a millennial thinks, hey, if you need to know what a mother thinks, hey, a Black woman, like, you bring a unique value point to that company. They need your perspective. There has been countless times in my career that I was so grateful I was in the room because the intentions were pure. However, if something would have went forward, it would have been malicious or it would have been offensive. So I'll give you an example. Very recently, one of my clients was talking about the history of the organization, and it's a business that is headquartered in the South, in Alabama, and they're talking about unleashing and taking the leash off. And I'm like, no, you don't use the word unleash. And they're like, why? And I said, and then we went into that and they're like, oh my gosh, that could have been perceived so wrong. And that is the value that I brought being a Black woman and being a part of the conversation, the only Black person in the room.
Oh, I love that so much. Let's look at who we are as an additive, right? I love that, operating in that space. We have so many questions in the chat. I'm going to kick some over to each of you, starting with Kelly Perkins, who asks, as I'm sharing my accomplishments, what if many of them are outside of your job role? So Rachel, any thoughts there when trying to negotiate if a lot of your accomplishments are outside?
The transferable skills. So focus on the things that are transferable, even from those outside skills and opportunities, because usually there are, even if, like, for example, you're part of a fraternity or sorority, right? You think about, like, if you are owning large budgets, if you are leading, you know, your chapter of 150 people, how, like, what programs have you started? What initiatives have you kicked off? What new partnerships? There's usually some transferable skill that you can use to then discuss it and bring it into your work and advocate for yourself in that way.
Oh, that is awesome. Maria, Elizabeth Zamora asked, how do you determine if you are going above and beyond versus just doing your job? How do you change that perception if you're trying to get a promotion or raise?
So the first piece is, if you are trying to get a promotion, the first piece is that your manager needs to know that you are working, like you are committed to being promoted. So you can ask them directly, what does that next level look like? What do you need from me to demonstrate that I am promotion ready for that role or that expanded scope? So that's the first piece. If you're trying to get promoted and no one knows that you are looking to get promoted, you're never going to get promoted. Like, you have to be able to vocalize that, because it's part of what's required of that. On that other note as well is, Gabrielle mentioned this earlier, those emails you're getting, those kudos you're getting, those recognitions you're getting, like, do not be shy about being able to share that you're getting those things. And so if you're receiving them, even in work that you're doing from a community perspective or any type of recognition, being able to share that back with the people that you work with in a way that just demonstrates, like, I'm just, you know, sharing, or have people in your corner that share on your behalf, that provide that recognition, right? Those are things that can be done as well. That allows you to help your manager provide the business case that is necessary. Because I can tell you, the more senior you get in a role, you will know if you're in the promotion process, because you're going to be part of the process, right? There are going to be things that are going to be required of you to ensure that your manager can advocate for you, and that the people that are sitting across that table know you well enough to say, yes, what she is saying about her is what I see, or I see another side of her that add value in the organization. So again, it's something that you have to work on. You have to be consistent with it. And again, Rachel, I think, mentioned this earlier. What's the timeline? So what's the timeline? It could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 18 months. I mean, every organization and situation is different, but just know that the promotion piece, it cannot just be something you're doing on your own, because if you are, you're missing out on an opportunity to actually get it done.
Thank you so much, Maria. Gabrielle, Emily Garcia asks, what about when you're looking to negotiate or advocate for yourself with more senior people, managers, VPs, senior leaders, the C-suite? How do you maintain your confidence?
I think it's a phenomenal opportunity if you are able to negotiate with the C-suite. If you're able to speak to those senior leaders, that means you're on their radar. And so that's a little bit of confidence that should come automatically. If you have access to these decision makers, that means they trust you. That means you're already working with them. That means you have a relationship with them. If you are working with someone on a project, if you are checking in with them, if you're in communication with them, know that though they may have a fancy title, they are your peer. They respect your work. They enjoy working with you. They count on you. And so that should help you when you go to speak with them. They are your peer and they respect your work.
Thank you so much. Rachel, this one is definitely for you, because you talked about the importance of negotiating beyond salary. Kelly Perkins, Deidre West asked, besides salary, what are some other points that you could be looking at when you're accepting a new role at a different company?
I'm so glad you asked. So things like internet reimbursement, cell phone reimbursement, what do like gym memberships. I remember when I first started at Google, because we also have food, I would not open my wallet or pull out my wallet Monday through Friday. I didn't need to. And they also provided transportation to and from work. So I had literally no reason to pull out my wallet for probably like at least the first 3 years of my career, from Monday through Friday. That saves you so much money. And so even if I would tell you, I was making $50,000 a year when I first started. But I was getting so much more money from not having to pay for anything. I could just stash that money, all week long. And so that is something, other things and other little benefits to look out for. And especially think about the larger ones like maternity leave. How much coverage do you have? What are some of like the death benefits? I know people hate to think about the mortality, but it's important, especially when you have families and you have legacies that you want to leave behind. So all of those things are things to consider.
I want to add on to that just for a second. Professional development. You're investing in a company, you're giving your time. Can you go to a conference? Early in my career, I did not get, when I got that raise, I did get the raise and the promotion at CBS. I did not get all of the financial compensation I wanted, but every 2 months I was on a plane going here for this conference, going there for that conference. And they were still investing in me in terms of professional development. Things are different because the world is just now opening back up, but being able to work from home, being able to have that type of flexibility, or having them to invest in sending you to conferences or classes or seminars or webinars, that's something else you can negotiate too.
And I'll add one thing as well, as for those of you that are really eager and focused on the promotion piece, right? Once you get that promotion, being able to negotiate some coaching, right? To be able to ensure that you are successful at that next level. Because that's one thing I can tell for us, Black and brown folks, that we forget, and it's happening all the time. So just know it's happening at every other level. So know that you have the opportunity to ensure that you are taking care of yourself and you're investing in yourself. The organization is doing their part to invest in you as well.
Oh, I love it. Gem after gem. Vanessa Wade asks, is there any advice for small business owners on how we can approach pricing? I can take a stab at that and then pass it off to Gabrielle. I would say your network is just critical. So you need to build relationships with other small business owners to understand how they're pricing themselves. Gabrielle and I often have conversations about what our speaking rates are, other services that we offer, and it's critical to do that. But you also need to build relationships with who is your ultimate client base, right? So for instance, folks at Google, I have different contracts with them. I'm always in conversation around how do they look at budgets, what's important, what are the priorities. So building your network is really, really key. Gabrielle, I don't know if you have anything else to add before we move to our final question.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on that and say some of my larger clients, the Verizons, the Verizon Medias, the Yahoo, those conversations are handled differently than my small businesses, than when I work with influencers and talent. So I always keep in mind, I open the conversation by saying, what is it that you're looking for? Let's talk about your budget. And so I may do certain things for this client that I do for that client. And I do take into consideration, what is the benefit if I perhaps give a discount here? How can I get some additional leverage in another way? So.
Oh, love that. So our last question that we're going to be able to take on today is from Ashley Renee Lee. And I love this question. She says, as hiring managers, in what ways have you had to advocate for your team and also people on other teams who may not report to you? I want to get mine, but I have a responsibility, a sense of responsibility to make sure others, especially people of color, are getting theirs too. I see head nods. Rachel, Maria, go for it.
That just makes you a great leader. Like I said earlier, part of it is, yes, the responsibility to your team, but the other part of you is being able to see those across the organization and be able to contribute in a way that gives you the opportunity to speak and give your input to the process. And so I think that that's the one opportunity that we all have on this call is having each other's back, as simple as it sounds. It's like, what do we need to be able to support one another so we can all, achieve? And it's not a competition. It's not us against them. It's all of us. There's room for all. And so the way that you are able to approach the fact that you are advocating for your talent, but then you're advocating for someone else that's on that team, demonstrates your leadership skills as well. And it reflects good on who you are and what you represent. So when there are decisions to be made from a talent perspective, I can guarantee you people will go to you because they realize that you're not just focused on, oh, my people, my people, my people. You're focused on the folks that are deserving of the recognition, the promotion, whatever it may be. So it all comes back. It all comes back. The good you give comes back. The bad you give comes back. It's all connected. And I really see this even more critical when we're talking about talent and people and organizations.
Any other thoughts?
To add to that too after Rachel, but
Oh, thank you, Gabrielle. I was just going to say, that's one of the things I love about being a manager, especially in performance feedback. I can advocate because all these performance ratings amount to money. These promotion discussions amount to additional money, even things about like location. So one of my favorite points to check people on is like feedback. You know, feedback is this like broad term. So when usually, like, especially if they have critical feedback about people of color, I check, I'm like, what does that mean? Can you explain more? Would you give that same feedback to John? You know, like I always kind of advocate in that way and just try and press it and take it further. And so those are ways that you can, as a hiring manager, advocate for people in your team, make sure that they have they are elevated, they have the visibility, as well as they have the flexibility in what they need and what they're looking for from their employer.
And I would add that I've been at top companies where there was not a mandate for an annual review, and that is intentional, because if there's not a mandate for an annual review, how are you going to give people, you don't have to give people a promotion. You're not going to talk about compensation. It's not a part of the system. So as a manager, where I've worked places and that was not the protocol was not in place, I, as a leader, said, okay, I'm going to have annual reviews with my team. I'm going to let them know. I'm going to make sure they have succession plans. I want to make sure they know how they can get to the next level. And I will say that we talked a lot about knowing your value and knowing your worth. There are times in which, as a leader, as a manager, someone has come to me to say, I want this title, I want this promotion, I want this seat at the table. And so one instance in particular, I had someone on my team that was awesome. She performed really well. I could always count on her. Her work was phenomenal. She lacked executive presence and she lacked emotional intelligence. So I would not put her in a room with senior leaders because she would embarrass herself or say things that were just inappropriate. And so I had the budget to get her some executive coaching. I put her in some classes to kind of work on that emotional intelligence. So sometimes you may not be ready, but if you have a good boss, they should help you to get to that level.
Just wow, ladies. What a strong note to end on. I'm so grateful. I want to say thank you to Rachel. You shared so much. Rachel chatted with us about the importance of the tactical, knowing the timelines, knowing holistically what are the values that you have to really strengthen your negotiation strategy. And she also shared with us the importance of no, looking at that as a currency, being able to say no to things as well. Maria shared so much, just the importance of not letting that no be the final answer, right? So don't be deterred by the no's, keep pushing, be resilient as you're thinking about your approach. And I really appreciate her sharing her story. Gabrielle also reminds all of us to keep lists of our accomplishments, share what we do, really make sure that we're being bold and looking at the seats at the tables that we do have as opportunities when we're with those senior leaders. So really appreciate all of the gems shared today and all of your attention and you all being with us. This concludes our talk, and I just want to thank everyone in the room for joining. Remember, please don't forget to submit your responses to the post survey that we're going to send out, as well as with the recording. I saw several of you ask, so please fill out that post-event survey. We appreciate you all, and we hope you have an amazing weekend. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Angelina, Maria, Gabrielle, Kathy. You all are phenomenal. Thank you. Oh my gosh, just so appreciate all of you. Rachel, just everyone was amazing.